going to talk about himself in his book. Well, mainly about himself. But seriously, I just want to acknowledge how hard and how he's been working on this book and how proud I am. Thanks for listening. Please enjoy.
That's the best introduction I've ever had. Although there was a burn that Athens slipped in there, if you noticed. Initially we were going to get a babysitter and not have them come out to the party. But then I realized, I wrote so much about them in this book and have all these funny things that they said in there, but I got to invite them. And I'm announcing, too, that all the proceeds from the book will go directly to my children in the form of food, clothing, and shelter. So, I think that's pretty generous. Guys, thank you for coming, for just showing up. It's an obvious joke, but it's right there. To this party, and it's a bit of an excuse just to have a party, honestly. I've written a few books, and I have a brilliant marketing strategy. I space them out about 5 years, and that's just long enough for everyone, except for your mom, to forget you're a writer. So you have to start kind of all over again, spreading the word. Hi, Sophia. She wanted to get into word too. But honestly, I really do appreciate it, because you write a book, you hope that people will read it, you hope it'll kind of go out in the world and stuff, but you know who ends up caring the most? Your friends, your family, your neighbors, people that you know and love. And so it means a lot that you guys are here tonight, and I hope we have a good time. And I gotta say too, for the people that helped set up, I have, yes, of course, Grace, Joselle, working for the last couple hours, my mom, Art and Margie are here, and Brian and Jane worked all afternoon to set all this up, and Faith
came from Canada.
And she's got the record. Faith came all the way from central Alberta, Canada, to be at this book party. That's the spin I'm putting on it. I think she came to see her sister, and it happened to coincide with the party. But is that right, Faith? Anyway, so I'm going to be very brief here. I just want to get back to mingling with folks. But I'm going to read just a short part of a chapter in the book. And I was kind of like, should I read the intro? But I think I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 2, and I'll tell you why. Because we've got 3 or 4 people that are in this room that are mentioned in this chapter. So I thought that's kind of a no-brainer. Let me grab a copy here. And by the way, I love the kids here too. I'm so glad some kids showed up, and so my kids have some people to play with. That's fun. Okay, where's Chon? Is Chon here? Oh, Chon, I didn't get to say hi yet, man. You're the rock star here. Get ready, okay? This is from chapter 2 of the book, and the title of the chapter is "Just Show Up in Person," because people need your presence more than your words. Chon Armsbury is the luckiest guy I know. Or at least he seems to be. He has won not 1, not 2, but 3 fully paid trips to Hawaii. The truth is, my friend's winning streak is only partially due to luck. He also did some strategic maneuvering. When he first saw his 24-hour fitness gym advertising a raffle for a Hawaiian vacation, he resolved to do everything he could to increase his chances of winning. He learned you could fill out an entry form each time you worked out, and he did. I worked out every day just to enter the contest, he told me. Sometimes I worked out twice a day, so I could fill out an extra one. There was a catch, however, which ended up working in his favor. To win the prize, you had to be physically present for, see if I can get you one on him, for the drawing. Thousands had likely entered, but when the day arrived, only about 100 people came out. Chon knew he had decent odds. He probably stuffed more entries into the raffle box than anyone else. But when they called But when they called his name, he still couldn't believe it. I jumped around like Michael Jordan after hitting a game winner, he recalls. After taking his wife, Melanie, on a lovely trip to Hawaii, he started wondering if he could win again. The next year, he dutifully filled out an entry form after each workout. When the day of the raffle came again, he found himself waiting for the drawing, this time with even fewer people. They announced they would also be giving away some plastic water bottles. When they called Chon's name, that's what he thought he'd won, a water bottle. He stepped forward glumly to accept his plastic prize. Can I still win the trip to Hawaii, he asked. No, you don't understand, they told him. You won the trip. More Jordan jumping. Now he was hooked. But the next year, that terrible law of averages kicked in and the prize went to someone else. For year 4, he was working out at a different location, but they were running the same contest. When the day of the drawing came, they announced the winner, but the person wasn't present. They called out another, but no one responded. In fact, they called 8 winners before drawing the name of someone who was present, and you guessed it, that person was Chon. Woo! Hawaii trip number 3. What's Chon's secret to winning? Simple. You gotta be there. People put in an entry form, but they don't think they're going to win, he said. So they just don't come. You could probably see why I'm telling you about Chon's winning streak. It's a fun little story that illustrates It's a fun little story that illustrates the principle at the heart of this book. Showing up is everything. In chapter 1, I wrote that showing up isn't just about being physically present. There are many ways we can show up for others. But I'm adding a crucial qualifier to that statement. There's nothing better than being physically present. Narrow but deep. During the pandemic, we got a glimpse of what happens when humans are robbed of physical contact. In response to governmental restrictions, many spent months with little or no contact with people outside their homes. Most still had access to phones and the internet, but it wasn't enough, not nearly. Rates of loneliness and anxiety and depression shot through the roof. Virtual connection isn't all bad, but these tools can never replace in-person interactions. If you're in a long-distance relationship, FaceTime is a godsend. But as grateful as you are to have a way to connect, who wants to do that forever? Eventually, you want to be together. I've met a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook, but the connections I've been the most grateful for are the ones that have hopped the digital divide and led to meeting up in real life. At their best, online connections should facilitate physical gatherings and in-person friendships. Social media is a great tool to communicate ideas and make friends. You can impact greater numbers of people on these platforms. But ultimately, I've found that while your reach through social media may be broad, the impact that you have on people is shallow. In-person relationships, on the other hand, are the opposite. You can only be present with a small number of people, but the impact that you have on them is more profound. It's narrow, but deep. Show up like Jesus. Being physically present is a richer experience. It's healthy and humanizing. But there's a more compelling reason to show up in person. And it's simply this. That's what Jesus did. We Christians hold to the bizarre and beautiful belief that the God of the universe became a human in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. The disciple John put it this way: the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. I appreciate the colloquial spin the message puts on this passage. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. I like that because it emphasizes the physical nature of what happened. God truly took on flesh and moved into our midst. Why was it necessary that Jesus come to earth physically? Well, the big reason is that Jesus came to die for our sins. A phantom Messiah couldn't do that. We needed a flesh and blood Savior. Being human meant he could identify with our pain and struggles as well. The book of Hebrews says that Jesus, we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who's been tempted in every way, just as we are, and yet did not sin. He also came to earth to show us how to love each other, and physical presence was central to that mission. Jesus didn't isolate himself like many spiritual teachers of his time. He dove into the mess of humanity, touching diseased skin and disfigured limbs. He let children sit on his lap and prostitutes anoint his feet. Even when he taught, he often did so with people literally pressing against him. We endlessly debate what Jesus would say or do if he was walking the earth today. But there's one thing no honest reader of the Bible can doubt. He would be with people. He would touch people who are desperate and hurting and lonely. And that's exactly what his followers should be doing too. I must confess, I'm not good at this. Right now, I'm writing these words in a coffee shop. Well, not right now, but when I was writing it. A few minutes ago, a homeless man walked in and sat near me. Occasionally, an unpleasant odor wafts over from his table. He's not bothering anyone, but I'm a whiff about bad smells. Now I'm wondering how long I need to sit here before I can leave without hurting his feelings. Yes, I'm wondering this as I'm writing about how Jesus embraced messy, hurting, and I'm sure smelly people. I remember seeing a cartoon where two men are talking. One turns to the other and he says, "I love people, theoretically." Too often that's me. I understand all too well the importance of actively loving people and being with them, but it's easy for me to leave the hands-on stuff to others. I fight the instinct to rope myself off from the muddy stream of humanity and communicate, if at all, from a safe distance. Give me fresh coffee, strong Wi-Fi, and my cozy little family. I'm good. But that's not the way of Jesus. Following him means embracing the way he related to others. It requires choosing incarnation over disembodiment. It means being present even when it's uncomfortable and costly. We're never more like Jesus than when we show up in person. Thankfully, I've encountered people who model what it looks like to do this. I think of my son's fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Hines, who's now Mary's fourth grade teacher. The first time I met Mrs. Hines, I didn't know what to think. Her enthusiasm for her students seemed over the top. "For me, this isn't just a job," she said, fighting back tears. "It's a calling." I'd soon learned she was serious. Our son was in a basketball league, and she asked if she could attend a game. There are few things more tedious than watching elementary students play basketball. Trust me, the games have more turnovers than points. But she wanted to be there for him, and she came. She also sat in the bleachers of the games for another boy in her class. He wasn't an easy kid to be around. His daily outbursts disrupted the entire class, but Mrs. Hines started attending his games on the weekends, and things began to change. By the end of the year, he was thriving. I guess when you see that someone cares enough to show up for you, you'll do just about anything to please them. That's the power of presence. My friend, Daryl Forbes, pastors a church in Florida. Recently, he shared a story about the oldest member of his church. He felt God was nudging him to go visit her in the nursing home, and he went. She was happier than I'd ever seen her, Daryl said. We sang, talked, and prayed. I had no idea it would be our last visit. She died the next day. He said she was one of the original members of the church I pastored. She used to sit on a pillow for comfort, and for the last 2 years, we left that pillow there where she usually sat. He said, "Today I couldn't stop looking at it while I preached. Her battle is won." I have no doubt that God prompted Daryl to visit her that day, and I'm glad he listened. Without showing up in person, that elderly saint would not have received the loving send-off she so richly deserved, and Daryl would have missed out on providing it for her. These stories inspire me. They make me want to go the extra mile when I see needs arise. But I don't just know the power of presence secondhand. I've benefited from people showing up for me. I have an anxiety disorder, and in the weeks before last Christmas, I found myself at a particularly low point. I was struggling to sleep and spent days pacing around my house. My brother Darren heard about what I was going through, and one night he sent me a text. "I'm picking you up in 30 minutes. When I got this card, he told me about his plan. He wanted to buy winter coats and hand them out to the homeless in downtown Portland. So we went to Costco and each carried a pile of coats to the checkout. We tucked a $20 bill into each pocket and spent the night handing them out to grateful men and women shivering on the streets. But I had a feeling that our little mission was more about helping me. And it's exactly what I needed. I had to get out of the house. I needed to stop thinking about my problems. Spending the night helping others was the best thing for my mental health. But I would have never done it if my brother had not shown up that night. I think most of us want to help when we see people in need, but we stress out over exactly how to help. We worry about having the right thing to say. It helps to remember that your presence is usually enough. Remember Chon, the guy I told you about at the beginning of this chapter who won all the trips to Hawaii? He's seen the principle of physical presence applied to more than just winning raffles. He works for a nonprofit organization called Faithful Friends. They pair adult mentors with at-risk youth. He uses his showing up philosophy when coaching prospective mentors. I tell them, don't overthink this. Don't overcomplicate. 90% of the value you provide for this child is just showing up, just being present. That's true, I think, for kids and for adults. The social scientist Adam Grant says that when someone is hurting, presence matters more than words. He wrote this: in hard times, people don't want to be told to look on the bright side. They want to know that you're on their side. Even if you can't help them feel better, you can always help them feel seen. The best way to support others is not to cheer them up, it's to show up. If you doubt that, just think back to the hardest times in your life. You may remember a thing or two someone said to you, or you may recall nothing at all, but I'll bet you remember one thing with perfect clarity: who was there. A while back, I read a touching story about Beethoven. Because he was deaf, the German composer found social interactions awkward. But when he heard that a friend had lost his son, Beethoven hurried to the man's house. Once inside, he offered no words of comfort, but there was a piano in the room. Beethoven sat down, and for half an hour he poured out his grief through music, and then he left. The friend later remarked that no other visit had been as meaningful. I love that story. But the scary thing is that Beethoven could have stayed home. He had every reason to. He wasn't good with words. There were other more eloquent people to comfort the bereaved man, but he showed up. He offered what he could, and it was more than enough. That's true for you too. There are people who need your help, people who are hurting, people who won't make it without you. And if you come alongside them, they will mean the world. You'll find ways to encourage and comfort them. God always puts a piano in the room. Just show up and play with all your heart. I realize it was a little bit of a downer. There are also a lot of dumb jokes in the book, okay, that kind of give a little levity as you read. But again, I just want to thank everyone for coming. It means a lot to see all these faces, and it's so interesting to see we got, people from the Well, where I go to church, tons of family and friends and kids. Hi, sweetheart. And it's just, it's really encouraging. And please do grab a book. Again, they're free. And it's funny when you're not famous. I'm still waiting for Oprah to call. You kind of got to pound the pavement and get the word out about your book. So anything you can do to spread the word is super helpful. Even if it's just telling another friend about it, or writing an Amazon review, or buying 10,000 copies and putting it in your garage. Whatever it is. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Please eat all the food. I think we brought too much, and I don't want to take it all home. And I'm looking forward to talking to all of you. I think I've talked to most, but this is just a really fun night. Thanks for